What's going on, everybody? It's KRYPTONIAN SAIYAN here, bringing you guys another Chainsaw Man chapter review for chapter 114, and we got quite a bit to talk about here in this chapter because between Yoshida showing up and the false Chainsaw Man popping up, there's going to be some fireworks that happen at some point during the situation with Denji and Mitaka that they find themselves in, and it feels like Yoshida is here once again to prevent Denji from doing something stupid that he might regret later on that will put him on the radar of Mitaka, Fami, Yoru, and that's eventually going to happen, as is a situation where Mitaka gets a new weapon, but we'll dive into that later on. So getting into the review itself, the chapter opens up with Denji telling Mitaka that they're caught in the trap of the Eternity Devil, and when Mitaka tries to call out Denji for seemingly acting like he knows something about devils, Denji doubles down by saying that he knows a lot more about devils than Mitaka gives him credit for, which leads to her trying to reassert herself as being the more knowledgeable of the two of them. We then see the Devil Hunter Club members show up saying that they're at the aquarium because it's apparently a hotspot for devil activity, and after we see the class president prepare to announce himself, Yoshida just casually shows up to reveal his presence, and we see how Yoshida is being viewed by the other students in the Devil Hunting Club, with them remarking that Yoshida is a really big deal, going from being a high school student to being a public safety devil hunter, which we know is a big deal just given that even that mad lad Kishibe in Chainsaw Man Part 1 was impressed by Yoshida's skill, despite the fact that Yoshida was still a high school student and very young in age. We then see another council member who should start giving Denji flashbacks to Kobine, because he begins to freak out in the same way that Kobine did during the first battle with the Eternity Devil, which means Denji should probably take away any sharp objects at this time so no one ends up getting stabbed when this dude eventually loses it, whereas Kobine was told by her family to either start her life as a prostitute selling herself for money or become a devil hunter. This one reveals that his parents told him to join the Devil Hunters Club because it would get him scholarships. While that boy is trying to reevaluate his life choices and listening to his mother's advice, Mitaka recalls Fami's words about turning Denji into a weapon, and we can see the conflicted expression on Mitaka's face because she doesn't want to go through with this at all. That much you can see. After the class president states his name and starts barking out orders, we see Denji yawning because Denji is likely getting the vibe that this class president, he's just a clown, which is a great setup because if and when he does transform into a Chainsaw Man, Denji's reaction is going to be priceless, and we're going to need Fujimoto to make a remake of that Spider-Man meme while the Spider-Man are just pointing at each other. After they walk through the hallway and make it to the break room, the group discovers there are refreshments, and some of them have even begun to take the fishes out, saying that they can just cook fishes using a lighter and the leftover newspapers, and because they're in an aquarium and because they're in a loop, they're going to have infinite fish. However, as Mitaka leaves out the lounge because she's refusing to eat any of the fish, she stumbles across Denji, who apparently has found some money, and when he states the golden rule that finders keepers, losers weepers applies, Mitaka calls him out for being a good-for-nothing thief, and she tells him to go to the underworld, which I can't say the words she actually said because otherwise YouTube will age restrict my video based off of their updated content creator guidelines. So the word rhymes with the word bell and it begins with the letter H. After a hilarious scene where we see Denji and Mitaka trading insults, Mitaka again wonders if maybe just maybe she needs to turn Denji into a weapon, and she turns to ask Yoru for advice, which is huge because we see something I personally didn't think was going to be the case. Mitaka asking Yoru for thoughts kind of opens up the door for the fact that Mitaka has gotten accustomed to Yoru, dare I say it, in a sick and twisted way. She's actually gotten attached to her. That panel where Mitaka's standing alone in the hallway looking for Yoru, it speaks volumes because it really shows that Mitaka feels like something's missing, especially when we see her facial expressions change in the next page, but maybe that's just me. When Mitaka discovers that she has a flip phone, she holds up the cell phone trying to get service because if they can get service, then they'll be able to contact the devil hunters on the outside world in order to get them to help them out. With Mitaka, she ends up losing her balance and she breaks the flip phone in half. This leads to the class president sharing his dislike for the outcome of what Mitaka has just done, and we see that sweaty, terrified expression on Mitaka in the process, which leads to her sitting outside in the hallway with her head lowered after getting torn down in the process, which makes you wonder if this won't be a setup for her turning someone other than Denji into a weapon, or potentially turning that cell phone into a weapon, which we'll touch on shortly. So look, this chapter, it was a slower chapter, but there was some good here when you unpack what we got. not everything was deliberate. Asa opened up the chapter being verbally tearing down Denji and Denji holding his ground. It was a good foreshadow for that moment where Asa learns that there's more to Denji and Misiai. The boy, he's a walking red herring. Just when you think you have him figured out, you see something that you realize is just a distraction from the truth. He looks like an idiot, he acts like an idiot, but he's probably the most experienced person when it comes to fighting devils to anyone in that aquarium right now. He's probably doing the absolute most to end the situation with the Eternity Devil, and he's definitely got the most experience when it comes to fighting the Eternity Devil because he's actually killed the Eternity Devil. The other thing in this chapter that it did do is it introduces Asa Yume as being downright unlikable. Like, it's already bad enough that he's the fake Chainsaw Man, so we automatically don't like him because how dare he try to steal Denji's Riz by claiming to be a Chainsaw Man, even though he technically is a Chainsaw Man, but he's not the Chainsaw Man because the Chainsaw Man is actually Denji. But this dude accomplishes his goal of being just unlikable. He just jumped to the top of my list of characters I want Mitaka to turn into a weapon or kill. However, the good thing about Asa Yume being here is that at least we learned that Yoshida is definitely a public safety devil hunter, which means our boy Denji is being watched by the government because they're trying to prevent him from revealing his true identity as Chainsaw Man. But this also raises an eyebrow because Denji is currently the caretaker of the reincarnated Control Devil, and as we saw with Makima, governments, they got a lot of interest in the Control Devil. It's gonna be very interesting to see what Fujimoto is cooking up here. There's a long game at play here. Justice Kabine revealed that she had multiple siblings and a controlling mother, which led to her supporting one sibling all the way through college, and we potentially have just met another one of her siblings with this boy who was freaking out in the chapter, who just happens to have an overbearing mother, which sounds a lot like Kabine's mother, which makes me wonder, is Fujimoto at some point gonna reveal the stepmother devil? Because Jesus, it's getting brutal. The same when it comes to the cringe back and forth with Denji and Mitaka, which is so cringe it's actually funny. And it does kind of feel like there's going to be a setup for these two making some form of a bond with each other at some point in the story. I'm not going to go as far as saying that this is going to be like a Power and Aki situation where Mitaka ends up being like a sibling to Denji in the same way that Power was, and maybe potentially Yoshida ends up filling the role that Aki did, but there's definitely something being set up here. Then again, I might just be projecting my own experiences with my sister where we've had spats like the ones that you saw with Denji and Mitaka. Speaking of setup, given Mitaka was introduced as having her dead mother's cell phone, which is another attachment to a mother, this feels like Fujimoto is about to have history repeat itself with yet another devil. Mitaka makes a uniform into a powerful weapon. That uniform was one of the last things her mother purchased for. Now she has a broken cell phone that belongs to her mother, and she just broke it and she's emotional. I smell another weapon being created here. Chainsaw Man takes place in the 90s, mid 90s, maybe late 90s. I know a lot of you guys, you're younger than me. I can remember the early 2000s where not everyone had a cell phone, and they were becoming more common to see, especially once I started high school in the mid 2000s. But in the 90s, in particular the late 90s, which is when Chainsaw Man should be taking place, having a cell phone, that's a really big deal because like cell phones, they weren't that common back then. You still had people using beepers back then. So her holding onto a cell phone like that, that's a big attachment. That's a big deal because it's rare. So I do think that Fujimoto is going to be using that, and that's actually going to be my chapter question to you guys. Do you guys think we're getting this setup for Mitaka turning that cell phone into a weapon? While you think that over, click here to watch these other Chainsaw Man videos you see on the screen right now.